Super shit.
Woo! What up versus gravity? Right, today in this episode we're going to be talking about everything to do with calisthenics. So maybe a bit about why specifically we chose calisthenics, why calisthenics is the superior thing to everything else in the universe. Not really, but we'll be comparing it to other different sports, different activities, maybe a bit about the history of calisthenics, different training types for calisthenics, maybe best training regimen, optimum nutrition, optimum sleep, best calisthenics athletes out there. Yeah.
Right, don't give me too much, man. We'll run out of episodes.
So maybe, I mean, we've touched upon this briefly, but somewhat actually, why did you specifically choose calisthenics? Or like, why are we calisthenics athletes? Why are we not CrossFitters? Why are we not ballerinas? To be fair, ballerinas, like, they've got some stupid strengths, and maybe why don't we do ballerina? Like, why are we staying with calisthenics?
I actually don't know, man. Now that you say it, like, calisthenics is such a pain in the arse, so I don't know why. I think the main reason for doing calisthenics is because, like, when we, at least what brings it back for me is those videos we watched at uni.
Yeah.
And you just see people doing, like, full planche on their, like, fingers and, you know, what's the Maltese, but like the one where they drop into back lever and then they come back up.
View of Van Gelder, I think it's called.
I think so, yeah. But not on the rings, on like 2 bars. Those sorts of moves were just like, you know, it made us go, what the hell? Like, how the hell how does anyone do any of that stuff, right?
It was even back in the day, we didn't even see that. Back in the day, it was just one arm pull up.
It was muscle ups. Yeah,
even that was just whoa.
It was insane, and like, yeah, for me. We talked about this on the last podcast, but for me it was like when I went to the park and all I saw were the bars, it kind of just clicked. I was like, okay, start small, start to pull up, start with dips, and then it's suddenly like, wait, I know what a muscle up is. I remember seeing that. I want to learn that. Then it goes into you know, researching on YouTube how to learn a muscle up, and then bang, you get your first muscle up, and then after that it's just pure addiction.
Yeah.
But like once you've unlocked that muscle up and you have the feeling of flying on a bar, it just hits different. There's like, I've not ever met someone who has unlocked a muscle up on the bar and then gone back to something else. They've always done calisthenics. Whether they do something on the side as well is different, but they always then, you know, get through and start doing calisthenics regularly, and it becomes part of their lifestyle.
Yeah.
That would be my answer. What about you?
Yeah, for me, it's one of those sports I very much compare it to skateboarding. Like, I mean, I'm a terrible skateboarder, but I have a real passionate love for it. It's very high barrier to entry to like officially do calisthenics. So I mean, a pull up in theory is not that high a barrier to entry, but a handstand and a muscle up are. The ollie, which is basically the most beginner trick. I mean, you did a bit of skateboarding, I forget. Once you learn the ollie, you're hooked. Like it's as simple as that. Which is potentially comparable to the muscle up. Once you do the muscle up, or for me, it's actually more the handstand. I didn't actually get muscled up for like 2 years into my training, but yeah, very high barrier to entry. It's you versus you. You're mastering. I mean, I guess we're lucky because we've kind of got the body type for it in the sense that we're not like big boned to use that term. There's some people out there that it's going to be hard for you guys to do some of these things. Yeah, which is why you probably maybe play to your strengths and maybe powerlifting or something else like that. I mean, I guess we haven't tried all the other sports out there, but yeah, super high barrier to entry, which means that most people give up initially because it takes so long to do it. But then once you learn that first skill, because you've seen how much work you put into it. I still remember in second year, this is not calisthenics related, but it was, do you remember when I first did my first hill flip in our second year house?
Man. The euphoria.
Yeah, I literally, like, we all screaming around the house, running around, and I kind of get that same feeling when I do a calisthenics trick now. Like when I did my first front lever, I was gassed because it's like I've literally been working on this for a year and a half, and I finally got it. I mean, I'm never truly satisfied because that's just me, and like, my first thing was like, oh, it's not long enough.
I think that's normal though. That's normal for calisthenics. I think everything that we do in Cali, bar handstands, everything is like, it's not enough. It's not enough.
Yeah, we're never quite satisfied.
Yeah,
but I think that's why we do well as well. Because if you're satisfied with doing minor achievements, you're never really going to push it that far. True. And also what we've definitely noticed is that people that are naturally very good at it, they tend not to stick to it because it takes them a day or two to learn the skill. So for them, it's like, there's no real... You know how they say, like, life is not a destination, it's a journey? Yeah. And that's what calisthenics... If it would be a destination, if it took you a day to learn everything, it'd be boring. But because we've learned to enjoy the process and we've seen how long it's take, honestly, it's the best feeling in the world when you know you've been working so long to get to X, Y, Z, and you finally achieve it.
Yeah.
And I find that hard to achieve in other sports, such as maybe bodybuilding, because you can do the bodybuilding moves, i.e., this, that, from day one. Like, there's no real skill element to it.
100%.
Whereas a front lever, I mean, you can do that if you want, but you're not doing the front lever until you actually do it, which can take a year, 2 years, 2 weeks if you're one of these freaks. And I think that's why I enjoy it, because it just takes so long to get good at it, and then when you finally get it, it's like you're building up, and then when you finally get it, it's like a burst of euphoria of just, oh, I've got the front lever or whatever.
Do you know the other thing for me is, do you remember we used to watch Dominic Sky back in uni?
Yeah.
And it was that kind of, I said this to Sam the other day, it's that kind of beanie on, vest on, in the garage during winter, you know, head down, let's just grind, let's work.
Yeah.
And the best thing about calisthenics is the type of body that you build. So you might have noticed it, right? And again, not throwing any shade to any other training style, because at the end of the day, they're all great. But the type of body you build with calisthenics is just so different. Like the muscle tone.
It's aesthetic for one, which, let's
so
be honest,
aesthetic.
like,
let's dispel this myth right now, because there's probably plenty of you guys that are watching this and you probably look at guys who do bodyweight exercises and you go, well, you're never going to get that big. Let's dispel that myth right now. There are plenty of athletes out there who dedicate themselves to the sport and they are huge. But not only are they huge, they might not be as big as bodybuilders, right? Fine, but that's not the point of the sport. They look so powerful. Have you ever looked at a gymnast?
They look strong. They just look strong.
They might be short, right? But and they've got massive biceps, right? But they look so strong. Like, if you look at the size of their forearms, it's just like, dude, like,
that's crazy.
This guy, I don't want to fight him, right? And it's the kind of same output that you get from calisthenics. You have this kind of strong, vascular, rigid look about your muscles. And what's more is you have the skill with it. You have the strength. It's not just show. It's actually, you know, it's useful. But that, like, I remember watching those Dominic Sky how to start calisthenics videos. Do you remember?
Yeah.
And it was just like him in his tracksuit bottom in the cold, and he's just doing his like training routine. And it's all, you know, you see all the muscles in his core and everything. And it's just like, dude, this looks so aesthetic. But the other thing as well, and I think this is what keeps us going, at least what keeps me going, perhaps not you so much because you were watching it before me, but anime. Bro,
I know for you.
For me, like, when I'm watching, like, right now I'm watching Naruto and I'm trying to get my way through it, but when I see, like, the leveling up that he goes through and the training arcs and all of those terminology, it's just like, all of that culminates together for me, and it motivates me even more to stick to calisthenics, because it is something that you can do anywhere, and there is, like Sam said, there's a real grind to it, because it's not something that you can just, like, you know, with weightlifting, you can go up in small increments and you can progress relatively quickly. With Cali, you can't just jump from tuck planche to full planche.
Yeah.
It's going to take you anywhere between several months to 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, whatever it is, and so there's a real training arc to calisthenics. And that's,
very much
for me, I love that.
It also requires a lot of learning. I'm not saying that other sports don't, but say the average bodybuilder might not know what scapula means, or depression, retraction, internal rotation, external rotation. Somebody that takes their training seriously, you should know about that, no matter what sport you're into.
Yeah.
But the average gym goer, as the average calisthenics athlete, you need to know this stuff, which again plays on the whole high barrier to entry. Like, it's quite funny whenever we go to get, I was going to say acupuncture then, but not like physiotherapy or whatever. And we know exactly, we're like, our external rotator cuff is a bit tighter because we do too much of this, and they look at you like, how the hell do you know all this stuff? Maybe because they're used to the average, and the thing is, they see more gym people than we do, and they talk to them. So for them to say that we know that knowledge shows that calisthenics people, you develop such a good understanding of how the body works, biomechanics. There's so much work that has to. It's literally, for me, because it's not a professional sport, whereas CrossFit is. So there's a lot more research out there, and there's a lot more kind of industries that support it. It's almost, for me, it's the best, because you almost become an expert. You almost are professional within your own world. And then when you meet other like-minded calisthenics people, I remember when we first started training at the park and we first started meeting, it was like, oh my god, you know what a front lever is, or you know what planche is, and it's just, you become instantly best friends with them. And I think we haven't even touched upon this, actually. Arguably the best thing about calisthenics is the community.
Oh, 100%.
By far.
Yeah.
It's amazing. It's a bit like the skateboarding community, a bit more level-headed and screwed on, I would say, than skateboarding. But man,
just on community, if you guys do want to get involved in our community, go and check out our Discord. Also go and check out our blogs as well, and please tag us in stuff if you're doing anything in the way of training, whether it's calisthenics or whether it's whatever else that you're doing. Tag us in it. But definitely get involved in our Discord Discord community. We'll drop the link in the description for this podcast.
Love to help. So it's our passion. Like we do
exactly.
This for no money.
Just it's a space to be able to go and chat to people that you like yourselves are training for, and get access to us. We've got years of experience under our belt. We want to help you. So get involved with that. Anyway, sorry. Back to
I was going to say, because the gym can be a bit of a top. I don't want to be that guy that shits on the gym, because I actually love training at the gym, even though I do calisthenics. I like the atmosphere. I like flexing on people, doing handstands as well, which I can't lie. Which it shouldn't be a reason.
You like impressing girls, man. That's what you like doing.
Everyone does it. But they say you shouldn't go to the gym to show off.
He's so single it hurts. Ladies, if you're watching, he's single.
It works, right? I need the validation. But the community is the best, and it's very much. I know I keep going back to skateboarding, because there might be a lot of skateboarders out there, but because it's such a high barrier to entry, I remember how much it sucked to try and learn the handstand. So when I see someone trying to learn the handstand and they're doing things that are obviously wrong, I'm like a magnet to them. I'm like, I need to tell you what's wrong, because I don't want you to make the same mistake.
Yeah.
You're not going to get that in gym. If anything, if you go up to somebody, it's like, actually, you should do it like this, thinking like, man, it's a bit like
100%.
meathead.
We went to the Arnold Sports Festival this weekend that went past.
Yeah.
And one thing that I came away with, obviously, I thought it was a great event. It was really good to try this stuff out.
Sponsor us next year.
Yeah. Get versus Gravity a stand in the Arnold Sports Festival, if it's even the Arnold Sports Festival. But one thing that I took away from it is the environment and the kind of the aura around people was so toxic, to the extent where it wasn't helpful. So, for example, you could obviously tell that it was a very, nothing wrong with being competitive. Of course, we're super competitive, but we're competitive to the point where we want to better each other. In that kind of environment, I've noticed that people just want to be the best, and they don't really care about anyone else. And, I got this kind of, that aura from the people that were kind of there, which was, it was all about themselves, looking the best that they can look, compared to everyone else.
That's what happens. If you base your whole sport around validation from other people,
or aesthetic as well, yeah.
I've definitely spoken to you about it. Actually, one of the least confident I've ever felt was when I trained for aesthetics.
Yeah.
Because the results are directly linked to validation you get from people. So I started wearing tighter clothing. I would be more perceptive of how others were looking at me, and if I didn't get that look back, I'm like, maybe I'm not big. Whereas when I train for sports or performance or strength, I can see with my own eyes whether I'm strong, so I'm kind of giving myself my own validation.
Yeah.
And I was like, I don't care whether I look big or not.
It's subjective.
It's very, it is.
That we said this, I don't know whether we touched upon this or not, or whether it was in the last episode, but, being objective about your training is important, right? Measuring progress is important. When you're talking about aesthetics, you're never going to be satisfied.
It's a black hole.
It's a black hole.
It
and
is.
So it is entirely subjective as to whether someone is big or not, because it all depends on the perception of yourself and everyone else.
And then there's the whole steroids thing that comes into it. You can be as big as you want, but someone who's with terrible genetics, who's taking PEDs or growth hormones, is just going to outwork you.
Yeah,
you've done that here.
So, that's the beauty of calisthenics, really, is it is all performance based. Yes, you get a beautiful physique with it, but your main objective is performance. Strength.
And I tell you what, coming from us, I would rather strength than... There's nothing that feels better than just lifting. And this probably goes over to powerlifting as well, which I'm not going to lie. The feeling you get from doing a heavy deadlift, there's very few things that come close to that. So I guess those are the different parallels. Just being strong, I feel like... It is a sleeper build.
If you're the type of person who loves wearing a big pump cover and you look skinny to everyone else in the gym, but then you deadlift 180, 200, then you know what we're talking about. Again, with calisthenics, sleeper build, right? Because you're not going to be bulky like a bodybuilder, but as soon as you take that top off,
you're strong.
You look strong. Look at Bruce Lee, right? A lot of people love Bruce Lee. Why? Because he's the epitome of mastery of the body.
Yeah.
Right? He coined the dragon flag, right?
It's cool name.
He was doing finger push-ups like this on 2 fingers.
Yeah.
the guy's not built like a guy who's huge and on steroids or whatever. He's lean. In fact, he kind of looks skinny. But you look at him and you go, damn, he looks strong.
Strong, yeah.
He looks strong. Like if he was going to punch me, and we've seen videos of him doing 1-inch punch on people, he sits them down.
Yeah.
I'd rather have that.
Well, it's just strength as opposed to size.
Yeah.
I think that's why everyone respects gymnasts. I don't know anyone out there who hates on gymnasts. I think a lot of people are just confused because they don't really get how the scoring works. Like the clothes they wear might not be necessarily that appealing. So it's a very foreign concept as a sport. And also most people don't really realise. Normally when we talk about gymnastics, we talk about the rings. So that's your iron cross, all the kind of... We're not necessarily talking about the tumbling, which in its own merit is just as good. I'm not saying rings is superior, but calisthenics kind of draws a lot more parallels to the rings, which is more strength based. So they're your kind of ultimate strength athlete. I forgot where I was going with this. I forgot. But one thing I was going to say, so I think the main point about calisthenics is it's basically gymnastics, but more so...
Well, it's without... Yeah, it's like... I'm actually happy you said that because I was about to talk about it. The beauty of calisthenics is, if you compare it to gymnastics is a sport that you take up when you're small, right? When you're a child and you're conditioned into a certain way of training. You're prepared. Your body is prepared over for a decade, right?
Yeah, longer, yeah.
Until you start doing the advanced stuff. You don't see kids doing the still rings, right? Because simply they're not strong enough to do it. So it takes a decade or more, as Sam said, to be able to condition you to that point. The beauty of calisthenics is you've got no coach, unless you obviously hire a coach like us, right? But you've got no coach, and there's no actual way, like universally accepted way of training in calisthenics, right? Some people do grease the groove. Some people, which is, sorry, by the way, is basically like doing something once every like couple of hours. So it might be a handstand hold every couple of hours, right? Some people do traditional sets and reps. They treat it like bodybuilding, right? Some people treat it like gymnastics, where they do a lot of flexibility, mobility, and conditioning of the joints. Some people treat it like powerlifting, right? Where you do like high intensity, so maximal effort, but only a couple of times a week. It doesn't matter, because the point is that's the beauty of calisthenics, is there is no right way of training.
Yeah, I think that's the beauty of it.
Whereas with bodybuilding, everyone kind of accepts that you've got to train, you've got to have a lot of volume.
Yeah,
you've got to achieve hypertrophy, right? Yeah. That's the crux of bodybuilding, right? However you get there is up to you. Powerlifting, obviously, you need to train for maximal strength, because the whole point of the sport is based on maximal strength. Now, calisthenics is, well, how the hell do I even get into the position for a full planche?
Yeah,
because very few people in the world can even do a full planche.
Yeah.
So how do you normalize and standardize the process? Some people have tried. But effectively, what you'll see on YouTube or Instagram or whatever is everyone's got a slightly different approach. And that's the beauty of it is, like you said, you versus you, and it's the problem-solving element of calisthenics which makes it so appealing. You have to learn to be able to do the sport.
Yeah, another thing I like is actually it's a very new sport, and the reason why that's good is one, because it's very exciting, but two, the boundaries being pushed literally day by day. So the video that we watched that we keep referring to, which we'll probably put it up one day just so what you guys, what we're talking about. But I mean, the first videos we watched in Russia, I don't even think I even saw Morty's. Or like
it was, but it was like a really hollow
bag. Like that, right?
Yeah.
In gymnastics, you've got bands like A, B, D through to maybe like E of different difficulty of things like those things. They're set in stone. I don't think skills get added or taken away that often. Calisthenics, every single year you've got some new 14-year-old from some random country who does something that was thought to be impossible, and now it's the 4-mile concept. Right, when someone does it once, then everyone starts doing it.
Yeah,
it's a very new and exciting sport, and it's something that if you're young and maybe you could generally have an impact on in the sport. Like you could come up with a move that then gets named after you.
Yeah.
So it's very dynamic. You can do it wherever. I think this is another best things about calisthenics is that you can do it at home. So maybe if you're afraid to go to the gym because you're intimidated, I know maybe a lot of girls as well. I would say you guys, but you girls might be intimidated going to a gym. Buy a pull-up bar. We've got some dip bars over there. You don't even necessarily
need that. You just need the floor.
So very high barrier to entry in terms of being able to do the skills, but also a very low barrier to accessibility because you can literally do it anywhere. Prisoners, they do calisthenics. And would you agree when we say calisthenics, that's basically the same as kind of body weight? Like those two terms are interchangeable.
Exactly. The whole premise of calisthenics is you do it with your body weight. And sorry, one thing I also want to say, the beauty of body weight training and calisthenics, I discussed this with someone else the other day, is the risk of injury is so low.
If you're taking your time with it.
If you're taking your time with calisthenics, and but even if you're not, right? So let's say you try a full planche.
Yeah.
If you haven't got the strength, you're just going to fall down.
Yeah, yeah.
The worst that's going to happen is you're going to hit your face on the floor.
And if there's an injury, it's likely to be a minor one. It's not going to be like
minor.
You dislocate a vertebrae.
Yeah. Now, obviously, we gotta respect the sport and say, actually, yes, there is a very high there's a high risk of injury, but it depends on the training stimulus. Like you said, if you take your time and you don't rush, then fine. If you were to try an iron cross today, and you really tried, yes, you could snap something, right? But if you were to just try a push-up right now, you're not going to injure yourself, right? I mean, there's obviously a chance, but the chances of it happening are very small. If you're going to try a body weight squat, the chances of you injuring yourself are very low.
Zero, yeah.
For even the pull-up, right? The chances of you injuring yourself on a pull-up is very low, unless you do a super heavy weighted pull-up or whatever, right? But we're talking about as you start. The reason for starting calisthenics is because you can do it in your home, with very little risk of injury.
Yeah.
And so the motivation comes. And the other good thing about calisthenics is you progress at the start very fast.
And it is actually quite, I know I keep saying high barrier to entry, but the basics, which is you do pull-ups, push-ups, dips. I mean, you could add squats and like plank. But the kind of the real basics that are going to get you far, pull-ups, push-ups, they're basic movements.
Yeah.
So whilst it's a high barrier to entry, and the reason why I say that is because I consider calisthenics once you've learned handstands and kind of muscle ups. If you're just doing pull-ups, push-ups, dips, like you're kind of just doing body weight training, which is still good, but to kind of really get into the world of calisthenics.
Yeah, then you need it.
Normally people learn those to then learn the skills. People rarely do kind of sets and reps just to stay in sets and reps. Like people kind of play to their strengths later on. But yeah, low barrier to accessibility. Anyone can do it. At any age, really, like old people can do it, and old people probably should.
Well, a lot of old people do, man. We see these videos of old Chinese men doing front levers at the age of like 82.
Yeah, yeah. Amazing for joint health as well. So like, I guess one of the pillars is always use full range of motion.
Yeah.
Never cheat it, but it's like old people. And then if you can't do a push-up on your knees. If you can't do a push-up on your knees, literally stand against that wall and then just push away. So it's actually, anyone can get involved with it. It's super cheap, low risk of injury. Anyone can do it, and the thing is, whilst it's easy to do the basics, it's quite hard to then kind of progress on for it. But that's good. You want something which is hard, because that's what impresses people. It's what impresses yourself. It's what gives you that sense of satisfaction.
Yeah.
Which is why I think a lot of people get bored of the gym, because it's very easy initially, but because there's no real technique to it and it's not that demanding, it's more just a grind. You don't really ever get that massive sense of satisfaction out of it.
Yeah, there's no training arc, man. There's no training arc. Honestly, like, you don't have to suffer that much, because in the gym, even if you're stuck at the same weight, right? Let's take the bench press. You start your bench press at 50 kg. Each week you add on 1.25 kilos. You're still technically progressing. Yeah. But in calisthenics, you can regress very, very, very fast.
Yeah.
Right? Especially with advanced elements. Like, I've done it so many times. I've been training front lever for 3 years. I've had it and lost it, had it and lost it, had it and lost it. I'm at this point now where, like, I've got it, I can do it, but it's so flaky, right? And that's the beauty of calisthenics, is it's not linear. And so it really is a training arc, because you have to actually sit down, rack your brain, motivate yourself, stay disciplined, keep doing it, fail, keep doing it, fail, keep doing it, and then bang, you got it.
People know that, which is why it's impressive. People are impressed by handstand because they know it's not easy to do. People are impressed with a kickflip because they know it's not easy to do. No one's impressed with a mid-level bench press. They're impressed if you. Thing is also, there's so many people doing gym that it's hard to stand out. Mm-hmm. Like, if you just stand out doing a bench press, you better be doing 250, 300. If I see a 100 kg, it's like, it's impressive. I can't even do 100.
But most people in the gym can do it.
Yeah, whereas like even a handstand, most people can't do a handstand, which is funny, because I'd argue a handstand's easier to get than a 100 kilo bench, whereas a 100 kilo bench, which is kind of, in America they call it a four plate bench.
4 plate.
Which I think is just over, whereas 245 pounds, which is like 20 kg.
Okay, yeah.
So I think that's like the kind of the golden like standards.
Yeah.
Whereas calisthenics, I mean, handstand's cool. I feel like it has better carryover to other kind of.
But you can do it for life as well. Like you said, old age handstands, you can do that literally for as long as you live. Obviously, up until the point when you physically cannot do it. But you can't. you can't keep bench pressing without consequences of, you know, excessively internally rotated
Yeah.
shoulders, injuries, and your strength will deplete. Your strength will.
And
At some
I don't
point.
know if you agree on this, but they're getting very good at calisthenics. Maybe more so on the weighted calisthenics side, has amazing carryover to weights. Not necessarily true the other way around. I have seen some people who were absolute beasts, like that guy I was showing you, the guy from Asia who could do like 85 kg on each hand. Like he's got a full Maltese, but they're far and few between. Whereas we know people, well, we don't know them in person, but within the calisthenics community, who've got stupidly strong weighted dips. You can bench 200 kilos.
It all comes down to if you were to transfer from bodybuilding into calisthenics, the reason it doesn't work is because in calisthenics there's a high degree of stability, joint stability. So specifically looking at the shoulder, right? So if you talk about things like planches, handstand push-up, front levers, flags, they all require a great deal of shoulder mobility and stability.
Yeah.
Now in the gym, when you're pumping lat pull down and you're pumping bent over row or overhead press to some extent and bench press, there's nowhere near as much shoulder stability required in the rotator cuff as you do in calisthenics. So this comes back to the point of when you're a calisthenics athlete, you're not just someone who does the exercises, you know your body inside out. You have to. Because if you don't, then you can't analyze where the weak links are and then you can't get stronger. Whereas in the gym, if you want to get stronger at bench, you just do bench. It's quite simple. If you want to get stronger at deadlifting, you just deadlift, and that's usually that's the way in which powerlifters and weightlifters train. They just do the same. They do that exercise.
You can't do that in gym.
You can't do that in calisthenics. If I want to get good at planche, I could just try and do full planches all day with no success, and I'll never get it. Whereas, you know, my planche routine right now, I have to do some form of isometric, so the hold. I have to do straight arm work. I accessorize with dumbbells, with bands. I have to work on my core. There's all sorts of stuff going on. So it's way more fulfilling when you actually get it because you've had to put so much more in.
Yeah, and then you can add other things like rings, which are just completely like they throw a spanner in the works, which is why I like give credit where credit's due. Because I mean, calisthenics maybe we like to think we've almost surpassed gymnasts to some extent in some of the more difficult moves, but gymnasts they'll kind of always be the king of this sport because you look at them on the rings, which are like 10 feet long. I actually was watching a video yesterday where they ranked all the different difficulties. I'd never seen so butterfly. I think is when you grab the rings and you put it into an iron cross. You don't pull the way through. He pulled into an iron cross, and then he went from here to an inverted cross. So pressed with his straight arms through a Maltese, through a thing, and did it all like seamlessly. And it's just, I don't think people can comprehend how do you train for it. And that's going back to what you said. You can't train that thing, even with resistance bands. You just can't train it. So it's like you're training all these. It's like going back to for your Hunter fans. Like you've got the Nen and the Ren and all these.
You got to get all of them.
You train all of them like separately, and then holistically they all come together to form this one ultimate move, which is the front lever, the planche, the whatever. Which is why I personally prefer. I think people within calisthenics view planche as kind of the ultimate. You could argue Maltese, but it's not attainable for most people. The kind of two power moves is your front lever and your planche, right?
That's typically what people will strive for and then train
it's
together.
Kind of the ultimate,
most combinations in calisthenics competitions will consist of
some forms of those,
some form of front lever and planche together, and then obviously then you get your Victorias and whatever. But that's a different part of the cake. Yeah,
and I think the reason why planche is kind of typically, I think if you ask most people, it's put above, not only because it's harder. People say it's not hard, it is, because if you look in that gymnastics video I watched yesterday, grade A, which is the easiest, front levers in the grade A.
Well, it's just a transition move.
They don't even use it.
Yeah, it's literally front lever in gymnastics on the rings. It's literally when they start, they pull through,
but that
and
wouldn't
then
even
come
count.
into cross.
It wouldn't count.
It doesn't count.
They don't
it's
hold
just,
it.
It's just a transition move.
Back lever's counted because they'll go from planche or Maltese to back lever.
Is that Zanetti?
I can't remember. I think
when they pull from back lever up into planche with straight arms.
I'm not sure because then there's the Van Gelder as well, which they pull.
But is that in a Maltese?
I thought like Zanetti's when you go to iron cross, but
maybe we're not that well versed in gymnastics.
Yeah,
but
so B is straddle planche and planches. It's because planche, how we were saying before, when you need to add all these different elements. Whilst front lever there is a skill, there's no balance involved with it. Planche is balanced. So you've now added something else into it, which is why people find it more satisfying. It's like the 360 flip in skateboarding. It's the kick flip and the 360 pop shove it. Put two of them together, more impressive.
Yeah.
So more elements you can add, and then you've got the one arm planche, which is pushing strength, pressing strength, balance, and it's a beautiful sport because you can keep adding.
Yeah.
I'm sure that there'll be a genetic limit whereby I don't think anyone would ever be able to potentially do a straight one arm planche flag to them.
You never know, man. If they're watching enough anime, they might.
That's true. Know. So yeah, keep watching anime and then you get better.
So what would you say in terms of, because in the intro you talked about nutrition, what would you say the traditional kind of nutritional, not plan, but the nutritional lifestyle of a calisthenics athlete?
It's different. It's very different from a bodybuilder one, because bodybuilding, I mean, it's the classic broccoli and white rice and chicken.
Yeah.
Because you want to get as big as possible. Calisthenics is the opposite. You actually want to stay as lean as possible. And I think, obviously, we could argue semantics. It depends on body type. There's people that actually respond to just being a lot bigger. I'm sure there's people out there that weigh, there's that Swedish guy that I'm always banging on about, it's like 86 kg. Maybe if he dropped down to like 75, that would actually completely screw him up. Although he'd be lighter, he needs to fuel his body. So this is something you learn over time, but I think, a lot less calories. You probably need potentially a bit less protein. Overall, I don't think you necessarily need to fuel. The quality still needs to be high. I mean, I'm definitely guilty. I'm lucky I can get away with not eating as healthily.
Don't take. I'm joking. Take tips from him, but yeah.
But as a whole, I'd say it's kind of different than bodybuilding.
Yeah.
Which might be quite hard because there's not that much resources out there. I don't think I've ever seen a nutrition video specifically built. It's just kind of stay lean. You'd almost maybe want to eat as if you were cutting, if you were a bodybuilder, but not to the extent that they do. But maybe the same kinds of foods.
So I think it depends on the person. So like I have a student who is a hard gainer.
Yeah.
And I've encouraged him, at least for the first year of his training, he should just be within a surplus, not excessive, but in a surplus. And his very first objective in this first year is to build as much muscle mass as possible.
Yeah.
And the reason this matters, so like for someone like me, for example, right, this doesn't matter as much because I'm a bigger person and I'm not as much of a hard gainer as he is. So I will build muscle a lot easier than him, but I'll also put on a lot more fat than he will, right? But for him, the reason why this matters so much more is because muscle mass, and I've said this a million times on Instagram or whatever, the amount of useful lean muscle mass, and this comes back to lean muscle mass, dictates the amount of force output that you can have, right? So if you have really small biceps, don't expect to have a huge weighted chin up.
Yeah,
right?
I agree.
It won't happen because you don't have enough muscle. The thickness of your muscle fibers are not enough for you to put out enough force to be able to do the movement, right? And the same applies for other calisthenic skills. If you've got really small shoulders relative to your body size and your body weight, don't expect to be able to do a full planche.
Yeah.
Don't be able to expect to do a handstand push-up. So I think there's a nice balance to it. I think once you've got enough muscle mass, and there's actually no telling as to what the right amount is. I think it all depends on the person.
Yeah, it really
For you,
is.
for example, you're always in two minds of bulking or cutting, right? For me, I know I need to build more muscle mass, but I need to do it in a lean sense. So I'm always cutting because I am not as lean as Sam, but I need to be as lean as Sam in order to truly maximize my calisthenics potential whilst also still building muscle. But so I think it really depends on the person. I think some people need to have a kind of bulking season to start with.
Yeah, I do agree actually.
Some people don't. It all really depends.
Yeah, it's what your goals are. Because I mean, we consider ourselves calisthenics people, but we're not actually pure calisthenics because we also want to be big.
Yeah.
Like if we were like actually all I care about is pure statics, which is kind of what we kind of care about anyway. But we also want to be big and look good whilst we're doing it.
Yeah.
Let's just say this, I would rather be, I think maybe like 78 kg now, 77. I would rather be 85 kg and maybe not have the cleanest Maltese, still have a good planche than be 71, not really be able to enjoy my food and look a lot skinnier, but have everything.
Yeah,
Obviously, I haven't been to those two extremes, so I can't comment, but I personally would prefer to look bigger. I like the feeling of just being big. I feel like for someone my height, my genetics, being that skinny, I don't think it necessarily fits right with me. So it depends what your goal is. It doesn't have to be one or the other. You don't have to. You can be 90% look big while still just having your front lever as your main goal. In which case you should probably be bodybuilding to a certain extent a bit more.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. It all depends. It all depends, like you say, on the goal, right? So okay, fine. So that's nutrition at a glance. What about training? How, from your perspective, what is the best split in calisthenics?
So, the one I enjoy the most, or the one that you think
what do you
gives
think
the best results for calisthenics?
The latter.
So the one that I think gives the best results for calisthenics at a more intermediate to advanced stage, I think is 3 times a week, kind of, you do everything in one.
Okay.
Because I think you'll be doing moves that are so demanding that you need rest days in between. I think initially you can just do push-pull. If you want to throw in legs, you can do literally kind of how we're doing now, because we're doing more conditioning stuff.
Yeah.
So we're doing a lot more hypertrophy. I know that if I was to say do front lever, like actual max holds or statics or dynamics, I would struggle doing 2 to 3 sessions of each muscle group per week. So I think what's his name, Rings Kage, he only trains 3 times a week. A lot of the top people tend to only train. So I think you do everything in one. And the first thing, you can supplement, say, planche with front lever once you're at a high level. But initially, I think whatever suits you best. But I think you should be training 4 or 5 times a week. Probably push-pull legs.
I think that's a good answer. I think the only 2 things I'll add to that is, if you're a beginner, like a real true beginner, I would say do full body 3 times a week is your best entry to exercise, and then transition into push-pull split. Because there's something I actually heard today, which is your kind of like your general physical level, right? Or general physical preparation, which is basically to prepare the body in every way, not just in strength, but also in terms of mobility and cardiovascular health.
Yeah.
So that you have a base, right? You wouldn't build a skyscraper with a tiny base. You build it with a big base, right? Look at the pyramids. The reason the pyramids are still here is because their bases are so big. And so treating training in the same way as a beginner and doing as much as you can at the start is beneficial, because
basics, the
basics, you know, but not just in terms of calisthenics. If I was a beginner, I would do all the calisthenics stuff, but I would also do squats, deadlifts, you know, all those
bench press,
in
general, everything,
running. All of that stuff to improve your physical shape is going to help you with calisthenics. And then as you become more advanced and you start to understand how your body works and what goals you want, then start to narrow the funnel and start to build that pyramid upwards to that point. And the other thing I would say, and building on what you said right at the start of your answer, is there's a split called bent arm, straight arm.
Interesting.
Which basically you cycle, so you could do 5 days a week. You do straight arm first day, so that'll be like your planche, your front levers together. Then the next day you do bent arm, so it might be weighted something and handstand push-ups, right? And then you take a rest day, or you just go straight back into your straight arm stuff. I guess the best thing about calisthenics is, like we said right at the start, there is no right way of training. You could bin all of what we said, and you could just say, right, I'm doing front lever every day.
Well, it's also going back to what you said in the previous episodes. Pick something that you're going to stick to. And that you're going to enjoy as well. And I think that's going to be more important than the right or wrong. And everyone's going to have preferences. Like, some people better at push, some people better at strength. I don't think anyone's necessarily going to be better at straight arm than bent arm, just because straight arm is
infinitely
a lot harder. I think that's what I love, making comparisons with other sports. I think pound for pound, I don't know whether you agree with this, rock climbers are the strongest pound for pound with bent arm strength, pulling bent arm strength. I think gymnasts, ring gymnasts, are the strongest pound for pound athletes when it comes to straight arm strength. I don't think there's any other sport out there.
I think straight arm strength. Straight arm strength is there's nothing else that even comes close, right? I mean, you know, without knowing too much about any other sports per se, like, I could probably agree with that.
So actually, let's touch on what are some other good sports or activities that fit within the world of calisthenics. And I say that because I mentioned rock climbing, which I think has
huge carryover for pull.
Well, we know someone like Magnus Mitbo. He's a ex-professional rock climber. Dude's an animal at calisthenics. I don't think he could do planche or anything, but I think he pretty much did iron cross first time. He had like a fingertip front lever.
Mm-hmm.
Did one of the first one-arm muscle-ups ever done. I reckon his max like weighted pull-up is probably at least 80 to 90% of his weight.
I would say so, yeah.
So there's because for some people it can be quite. Some people want to do a lot of things at once, and I guess if you want to do a lot of things at once, it might help if you're serious about getting good at calisthenics.
Mm-hmm.
It might help if you're going to do other things. At least make it so that it fits within the role. Like if you're then going to go and do underwater scuba diving, I don't know why I said underwater. You're not going to do out of water scuba diving. Like it's not necessarily going to fit that much into calisthenics. So what are some other things? Because often we would love to do a martial art.
I was going to say martial arts, yeah. But that's kind of an obvious choice because of the sheer conditioning that you have to do, and obviously the torsional forces that occur in your core.
Point.
And
BJJ probably not.
Probably not. You want to do a striking.
Yeah, boxing.
It needs to be a striking martial art, I think. The one, you know what, like. A lot of people in calisthenics community might frown upon this one, but I'd actually say CrossFit. And the reason I say that is because a lot of what they do is whether or not, you know, the form is great or whatever, there's a lot of stress on that rotator cuff.
There is,
a lot.
Yeah.
They're doing a lot of kettlebell swings up, and they do it with straight arms as well.
Just the condition in general.
The condition, but like it's not even the physical shape that they're in. It's actually, for me, it's the fact that they do a lot with their shoulders.
You are actually, and
because like I was saying to you today earlier, like a lot of calisthenics is the ability to stabilize the shoulder joint.
Yeah, it's
right?
also scapula is probably the most important thing in calisthenics.
If you this again feeds into powerlifting as well, right? If you're doing clean and jerk snatch with dumbbells, kettlebells, barbells, whatever, you've got a lot of force going through that shoulder.
Mm-hmm.
So if you can translate a sport into calisthenics, I'd say CrossFit's probably got a good chance of doing that.
Yeah.
If they fix their pull-ups and muscle-ups and handstand push-ups. But yeah, that powerlifting for sure. I think powerlifting has great carryover to calisthenics.
Oh yeah, I would agree.
Because it's all maximal strength, and most of advanced calisthenics is maximal exertion in isometric. Yeah. So you look at, you know, a lot of people talk about the carryover of deadlift to front lever and planche. It's true.
Yeah, it's big.
It's big. You look at other athletes, UK athletes, Denton, right?
Yeah,
the guy can deadlift a shitload, and he's got an incredible planche and front lever. So there you go. But yeah, I'd say probably
swimming's huge.
Swimming, striking sports, and basically any form of kind of like powerlifting where there's an excessive force through the shoulder.
I also think another beauty of this is being good at calisthenics carries over to everything.
Oh, everything, yeah.
Like most people that we know that are top tier at calisthenics, I reckon they could walk into most other sports. Apart from ones that require you to be big, like team sports, that's kind of where the difference.
You're not going to be great at calisthenics and be a professional footballer.
Or like, rugby player or something like that.
Oh yeah, you get flattered if you're doing calisthenics and rugby. Sorry guys, our video cut because we're stupid, we don't know how to work a camera properly. So we're gonna
quite simply.
We're about to introduce what the negatives of calisthenics is, so I'm gonna hand over to Sam. Sam, off you go.
Yeah, so essentially, obviously, we love calisthenics. We think it's the best thing that's happened since sliced bread, and better than that. I think probably all the Abrahamic religions were based off calisthenics, and that's kind of the only thing that predates the Big Bang is calisthenics. But apart from that, what are some of the negatives that are associated with calisthenics? I mean, there's the elephant in the room. It's pretty obvious. It's these huge, small, tiny little pigeon.
No, we're built like titans with these legs.
Yeah,
you know?
Small legs.
Literally, there's no way about it, right? If you're a calisthenics athlete, you are going to have to appreciate that having big legs is just not going to benefit you in many ways.
Why is that?
Simply because, you know, everything in terms of advanced calisthenics is lever based, right? You've got moment arms. If you've got, you know, a bit of basic physics here for people who know. If you've got a moment arm where the force being applied on the end of that moment arm is so large, guess what? The amount of reactive force that you need going the other way is going to be exponentially large.
Yeah,
right?
Force times distance. Yeah,
exactly. It's basic maths. It's not even physics. It's basic maths. So unfortunately, having heavy calves, for example, so people who play a lot of sports that they run and sprint. So for me, this was a very big problem for me. I played a lot of football throughout my whole life, and so my calves are very well developed. But it comes at a cost, right? So it takes me a long time to learn some of these lever-based skills. So having big calves isn't going to help. Being tall,
we're
on the taller side of calisthenics athletes, right? And on the heavier side, you weigh 79. I weigh, right now I've cut, so I'm 75. But at our peak, we were in the low 80s.
Yeah.
I've been even high 80s at one point, but that was when I was overweight. But even then, all of that plays into it as well, and it's weight distribution. If you've got heavy legs, guess what? The lever's going to be a lot harder. So, you can still get decently sized legs. Let's not be 2 ways about it. You can still have a damn strong squat.
You can have strong legs. Like, don't forget, the two aren't necessarily always that correlated. There's some people who've got mad squats who haven't got that big legs. So I think your number one goal in calisthenics isn't to get big legs, but at least try and get strong legs. So do 100%. Your squats, do your plyometrics. You don't want to neglect half of your body. And also it helps with muscle contraction. I know a few people that have started doing a lot more leg days in calisthenics, and they say that their full planche, they say that their front lever has actually been improved drastically because it helps with that muscle contraction.
It's true.
Especially with me, I actually struggle quite a lot with glute and hip activation because I've never really done any lower leg sports throughout my life, so I can actually struggle. So I know if I was to maybe spend a month doing a lot of squats, doing a lot of bridges, maybe even something like Muay Thai where you're really thrusting your hips forward, that would improve it a lot. It's just, which I guess maybe touches upon something else. It's hard to fit it in.
Yeah.
And I think that's the stage that we're at now. We know we should be doing legs. I can't really fit it in because I need to make sure that I'm resting and recovering. I need to allocate specific days for rest and recovery, which if I was to throw in a leg day in there, whilst I'm not using the upper body, that's not how it works, right? Your body needs to allocate resources for rest and recovery. So say if I've just done a scapular workout and the next day I'm to do a calf workout, the body will send some resources towards healing the scapula and then some resources towards healing the calf. Whereas if I didn't do any lower leg, if I didn't do anything, so an active rest day, 100% or 90% of the resources would go towards healing that. So for us, the reason why we don't do it is not because I actually quite enjoy doing a leg workout. I'll be honest. It's just I can't fit it into my training. We're already doing 5 days a week. I need those 2 rest days.
This is 100%. And like the other thing is, we we touched upon it before the camera cut out, and we kept. So funny thing is, we were talking for another half an hour. We fully were talking for another half an hour. And
no one was listening. To the wall.
And there was gold. There was literally literal gold in that conversation. But one of the things we talked about was CNS, which is central nervous system, right? A lot of what you do in calisthenics is it involves the CNS. I mean, obviously, everything you do involves the CNS, but the CNS comes into play a lot in calisthenics because a lot of it is maximal exertion within a certain isometric hold, and that requires a lot of coordination. And obviously, if you need to coordinate muscle groups together to be able to contract under super intense loads, or I'm using my words here. But effectively, that requires a huge response from your motor neuron system. So, you cannot expect to be able to train heavy squats and maximally, get the best out of your planche training and front lever training. You just can't do it. Because your body's only got a certain amount of, like you said, certain amount of resources that it can allocate to certain things.
Or you can, but you're going to have to accept that your priorities are going to have to change. If I was to throw in legs, I'm going to accept. I would do legs if I'm okay with coming to terms that my planche and my front lever aren't going to progress as fast. I'll still get them. It's just going to take longer. That's the sacrifice I'm willing to make. I want the front lever and the planche quicker than it would take if I was to become more holistically well-rounded as an athlete.
Yeah.
That's the sacrifice I'm willing to make. I'm not saying that's the right one. Probably in terms of holistic health, it's probably not the right one. Mm-hmm. But because I'm so addicted and all I really care about is calisthenics and statics, I don't really care if my legs don't look that big. It's something that I definitely will work on in the future. It's just I can't fit it in.
That's the beauty. Literally, I'm so glad you said that. I had that realization as well. You can become a pretty solid weightlifter later on in life. Right, but your calisthenics training age, especially for advanced elements, is relatively it's quite young.
Career, I mean, we know a few beasts out there.
Yeah, but even guaranteed, one of them, Lee Wade Turner, right? The guy he's a legend in the game. Started calisthenics late. I think I was speaking to him. He started at 35 years old, which is very late.
Yeah,
but he can do pretty much everything. Right.
Yeah.
So yeah, you do get some people like that, but for most people to achieve the truly impressive physiques in the impressive feats in calisthenics, you've got to start young.
Yeah.
We're already starting
None
late,
of them do
you know?
legs. Like the top guys, it's going back to, I don't know if we spoke about the other one, balance. You can't be a well balanced calisthenics athlete. Like the people that are the best at the best, they just do push and they just do pull. All the best in the world at certain elements, they just do one.
Yeah.
Valentin OTZ just does planche.
Yeah.
Literally nothing else.
Michal Urbanik
pretty much just does pull, and there's a reason why he's the best at it in the world. Like, I'm sure he could do legs if he wanted to, but guess what? He wouldn't have a 1 minute front lever. To him, I reckon he cares more about having a 1 minute. That's 60 seconds.
Just deep how long that is.
Yeah. Let's do a minute silence. Let's not.
Could you ask yourself? Could you even do a minute air squat against the wall? Like, you know how they make you do in PE or what do the Americans call it?
Heels up.
With the heels up.
Shaking.
Can you imagine doing that for a minute? This guy's holding a front lever for over it. Well, yeah, a minute.
A minute, yeah.
A minute. It's insane.
Because he made the sacrifices. He didn't work on his legs.
Yeah.
Thing is, we're not saying it's right or wrong. It depends. There's plenty of people say calisthenics people have chicken legs, which is true. Like, we're not saying we'll never get defensive about it. But it's like, well, yeah, we do have chicken legs, but there's a reason why.
It's a sport.
They're like that. So that can be one of the negatives of calisthenics. If you want to be elite level, you're going to have to make sacrifices on that. And the other sacrifice, which we spoke about, the other one is size.
Yes, 100%. Size, look, let's be real, right? You can build an incredible physique with calisthenics. You can be pretty damn big and really, really lean and vascular and whatever.
Look amazing.
But you cannot, let's just be real, you cannot be as big as a bodybuilder.
Yeah, you'll never be shouting lightweight baby and making it into the Mr. Olympia page.
Exactly. And it's just simply because, you know, the different training stimulus, right? Bodybuilders train for hypertrophy. They train, a lot of their sets go to failure. They do a lot of volume. They rarely ever are doing maximal exertion, short sets. You know, like we're talking about planche stuff. Like if you're training for a planche or a front lever or whatever, right? Or a handstand push-up. Yeah. Let's say handstand push-up. When you're first learning it, you can only do like 1 rep.
Yeah.
Right?
Literally, yeah.
Most people can't do more than like calisthenics athletes probably can't do more than like 5 reps of handstand push-ups.
Yeah.
So it's so hard to be able to get the same amount of volume and isolate those muscles, right? So this is the other bit. Calisthenics really, it's practically impossible to do an isolation exercise, right? In weightlifting, it's a lot more possible. If I want to work my biceps, I can do a preacher curl and take everything else out, right? If I want to do something similar in calisthenics, what do I have? The best option I have is probably a ring curl, right? But even then,
you
bring your core in, you bring your front delt in. So it's practically impossible to be able to do a true isolation, and so you cannot get enough volume for each muscle group. But you know, like we said, you can still build a super impressive physique, and personally, we think it's a better looking physique.
It's better looking, and you know the physique you can get of calisthenics is still better than you guys can probably ever imagine. I mean, how we look now, if you were to take a picture of it now and show it to our 5-year younger selves, I'd be like, holy shit! Like, if I looked like that, I'd pay £1 million to look like that right now.
Yeah.
So you can still look absolutely unreal. I mean, I think we look pretty good objectively, but we've got talent. There's some people out there that look a lot better than us in the calisthenics scene, but I mean, in terms of the ideal body type, obviously it's completely subjective. Like some people like the bodybuilder look. I think it's the perfect balance of functional strength, which people like using, which kind of doesn't really mean anything. Being functional at a pull-up is like...
It's not functional.
It doesn't really mean anything.
The only real functional strength is, can I actually walk for a couple of miles? Can I carry a suitcase?
Probably carrying the stuff.
Yeah. Can I lift the shopping out of the car?
Yeah.
You know? Can I bend over
and
can I reach for something in the top shelf? Like that's
mobility is more functional, if anything.
100%, yeah. Mobility is more functional, yeah.
But it's kind of the best of many different worlds. It's functional strength. You look great. You learn amazing skills. And it has a lot of carryover to
mindset, man. The mindset you build is phenomenal. Like I've not met one person who does calisthenics who has a weak mindset. I really don't.
Like, I mean, think of the sacrifices we've made.
And then extrapolate that to everyone else.
Yeah.
Like everyone else, these guys are doing things that are just they couldn't have done that without having sacrifice. I think this also brings us onto the third one, which is it takes a long time. You've got to be willing to sacrifice a lot of time to be able to become good at calisthenics. And you know, it might sound like, God, like, how late, like, tiresome is that? It's so much work, blah, blah, whatever. I'm not really that bothered. It is, but so is life, you know?
Yeah, nothing that's easy is worth working for. That's not the quote, but
it's
you know
nothing worth having is easy, right?
Yeah.
Like, it
comes easy, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Like, you know, if it was easy, everyone would do it. People, and
people want a Ferrari because no one else has it. People want a handstand because no one else has it. If everyone had a handstand, it'd be boring. No one would care about it.
Exactly. You know, like, if you're willing to work for your job because you want a successful financial future, why not apply and extrapolate that to your physique, right?
Yeah, everything, yeah.
For everything in life, right? Some of you guys might be sitting there and saying, "Oh, I'm going to end up with this person because I think, you know, I'm only worth this." Well, yeah, if you speak it into existence that way, then you're going to end up with someone who you think your potential is capable of getting. If you truly work on yourself, you could end up with someone who is a 10 out of 10 in whatever objective measure you have.
Yeah.
Same with calisthenics. It takes time, but it's worth it. It's a negative and it's a positive. Like we said earlier in this episode, it's a training arc. The whole thing is a training arc.
I think you need to be able to, in life, turn negatives into positives. If you always look at everything in the negative way, then you're just not going to enjoy life. View it from the sense that it's a negative because it requires work, but that's the beauty of it. That's why it's enjoyable, because it requires work.
Exactly.
For me, if anything, if something's quick and easy to get, that makes it boring. For me, that's a negative. If something if quick and easy to get. For me, if something it takes a long time to get it, and I know it's going to take me a long time to get it, like the planche, that for me,
that's worth it.
That's a positive. That doesn't. You need to be careful of the words you utter to yourself.
Yeah.
Stop brainwashing yourself and start seeking challenges that aren't going to be easy. Because if you're always like taking the path of least resistance, guess what? You'll be 50 years old. You'll look back and you would have achieved sweet fuck all in life. You'll be like everyone else. You want to stand out from the crowd. You want to be an exceptional individual. You want to be better than others. That doesn't mean like, oh, I'm better than others. I don't walk around like, I'm better than you. You're shit. But let's face it. If you work on yourselves and every other aspect of your life, which exercise is one of the best because it bleeds through, you do end up becoming better than a lot of other people, other things. And that's not necessarily an arrogant thing to say. It's just like, look, I've suffered, I've put a lot of work into what I do, so I should reap the benefits. And there's other people that are way more successful in other avenues in life than me, and cool, that they deserve it. Like, don't shit on people for working hard, but that's the beauty of calisthenics, as this one says, is do it because it's hard, don't do it because it's easy. The reason why people are impressed with a handstand isn't actually because they're technically balancing on their hands. It's because they have a deep understanding that it takes time to get good at it. And people appreciate effort. People want the struggle. They want the hero story. They want the David Goggins story. People like watching films or listening to people that have suffered or have learned a musical instrument. Someone who's mastered the piano. It's beautiful to listen to because that person's probably put 10,000 hours into it. I guarantee if I was to take somebody who's like a robot playing the piano, no one would care. Objectively, an AI has just composed a new song by a piano. Objectively, it's the same thing. Talent-wise, the AI would actually be better. Well, no one's going to watch an AI versus an AI at chess or whatever. People would rather watch the human who's put in 10,000 fucking hours to put into it.
Exactly.
Start applying that same ideology to your own life. Enjoy the suffering, enjoy the suck. Calisthenics is one of those best ones. Because whilst it is hard, it's not impossible. Everyone can do it.
I think that's it for this episode, man. So
if you're not convinced about calisthenics, then there's
no hope for you.
There's no hope for you.
You're done.
It's NGMI. You might as well just pack your bags. One-way ticket to Jupiter.
It's like not knowing who seizes.
Yeah.
Literally, like. All right, guys. It's been a pleasure. And yeah, we'll see you on the next episode. So take care and keep training hard.